Hello and welcome to the big picture. It's a sad day for the Indian Army and a day of serious concern for the country as 17 soldiers were killed and 23 more injured in an attack on the army camp in Uday in Jammu and Kashmir yesterday. This is supposed to be the heaviest blow the army has suffered in a single incident since the insurgency began in the valley in 1990, according to some observers. This is the second attack on a military establishment this year after the Pathankot Air Base attack in January. The needle of suspicion points to militant outfits from across the border after the 4 suicide bombers were killed during the counter-attack by the Indian forces. The attack has enraged the country as demands for action to counter the attack are gaining in crescendo. We will discuss today what have been the reasons behind the attack, who are the possible attackers and their mentors, and what are the options before the Indian government in terms of its responses to the provocative attack. To discuss this, I have with me M.K.Bhadrakumar, former ambassador joining us from Thiruvananthapuram on the phone line, Maj.Gen retired Ashok Mehta, security analyst, Commodore retired Uday Bhaskar, Director Society for Policy Studies, Saikat Datta, visiting fellow Observer Research Foundation and a senior journalist, and on the phone line from Islamabad is Imtiaz Gul, senior journalist and political analyst. Welcome to all of you. Uday, is this, there's a lot said in the last 24 hours or more about what has happened there and what should be the response and things like that. But first let us get this clear. Is there a serious intelligence failure?
Well, 24 hours later, Girish, I think when you try to reconstruct the sequence of events, clearly there was a lapse. What kind of a lapse could it have been avoided is something that the internal review of the army will establish. But prima facie, the first reports that have come from the site of this particular incident seem to suggest two things. One, that the perpetrators, this team of 4, whether we call them regular irregulars or irregular regulars or whatever, they had a fairly detailed knowledge about the layout of the camp itself. Perhaps they had information about the change of guard, the fact that 2 units were handing over, and that this particular group of Jawans who were in these 2 tents were the most vulnerable, and therefore they used very innovative tactics in terms of setting the tents on fire and then using their ordnance to kill them. So, to that extent, I would say that clearly it does point to an intelligence advantage with the adversary. How did this come about? Because of any local collusion or otherwise is what the investigation will identify and establish. And one strand which I saw was a suggestion that local intelligence agencies on the Indian side had provided some kind of an indication that there are 4 to 6 people who are in the region and could mount an attack of this nature. Now again, this is to my mind a fairly important observation. Its credibility, was it actionable, not actionable, at which level was it relayed is what the internal investigation of the army would point to. But clearly there was an intelligence asymmetry in the favor of the terrorist, which is why they were able to have this kind of a quote unquote success, if you will, that 20 people were killed in one incident, because it was 17 initially, 3 have succumbed and now we have 20 killed, which, as your report said, for the Indian army is the single largest loss in one incident since the insurgency began in the valley.
General Mehta, how do you look at this?
Well, I have a
you think this could have been avoided, especially in the context of what Uday says, and we have seen reports there were some reports about it.
I have spent 3 tenures in that area, in that very location. So I know every inch of ground there. My take is slightly different, and my take is that yes, there is a turnover taking place. Yes, that's a very vulnerable moment. Yes, the locals could have colluded, and given the unrest in the valley, locals might have colluded. Because how do you get this information that the turnover is taking place?
And does it take place at the same time? Is there a regularity to that kind of
changeover? Units keep changing, and you see, they are deployed on pickets. So they first come to the base, and this is the base. So there's a lot of people are talking about brigade headquarters. This is the rear base of an infantry battalion headquarters. Inside that base are 2 units or parts of 2 units. There are some deployed on the pickets, some are going up, some are coming back. That's how the turnover takes place, and there's a proper standard operating procedure. What the other side does all the time is on the lookout. They are on the lookout for when this turnover is taking place, because that's the time they are vulnerable not only at the base, but also on top in the pickets, because they are new to the place. So for a couple of days, both the units, in this case 6 Bihar and 10 Dogras, and I think with Dogras, there is some kind of jinx, because the Dogras were struck in Manipur also. They have been struck here too, and from one channel that the Jaish-e-Mohammed has issued a brief today that, because of the Dogra rulers in Kashmir, they will strike at the Dogras, and this is 2 days ago. So the element of vulnerability is there when this turnover takes place, and they are housed in tents. Normally they shouldn't be housed in tents. They won't be housed in tents because the tent days are over. Those were my days.
That's what I was wondering, why are they still in tents?
So they are in tents because there is a larger number of people in that area, in those barracks, than they normally are because of the turnover. Why I say my take is different, and I don't sound cynical or insensitive. There are 4 Fidaiin who have got in. Normally they ought not to have got in. After all, just on the 11th of September in Punch, what happened? They tried a similar thing in Punch. They couldn't get through. And in fact, they were caught. They were shot down after a long operation. So we are measuring the seriousness of this operation. And I said, please don't think I am insensitive. I am from the Indian Army. I spent all my life. Because of the casualties that have been caused, it's no great operation that the Fidaiin have carried out. What's so great about this? It's part and parcel of what's been happening in the past. But the use of incendiary ammunition, the tent catching fire, so only 3 or 4 casualties are gunshot wounds. So to consider this a turning point, yes, it is the highest level of casualties, but there have been more daring attacks.
No, that's right. But don't you think that so are you saying that the tents catching fire was something that the terrorists did not plan? It happened on its own?
No, they would have known. But I am saying that everybody is calling this the great turning point. Now, yes, it is a turning point because we have never lost. The Indian Army has lost so many people. So, and there have been lapses. So the lapses plus the level of casualties. So I do not consider this a turning point, but I do consider this the largest number of casualties that have taken place. And because casualties are so important today, the reaction, public reaction, political reaction, and reaction on the media has been huge. That it has forced. It has forced the government to make the kind of statement of a response.
We will come to that response. Mr. Bhadrakumar, how do you see it? How do you look at this attack? We are looking at the reasons now. We'll come to the responses a little later. As far as the reasons are concerned, we heard both Uday Bhaskar and Major General Ashok Mehta. The question is, could this have been avoidable? Was this avoidable? Was this something? Is this a major lapse as far as the security, is concerned?
No, Girish, I can't add anything further to both what Uday said and General Mehta said, because they are professionals and they have a better grasp of these matters, how the security is organized in a base and so on. I think, but up to a point that is important, in the sense that while we do the stock taking, we certainly need to pinpoint our deficiencies, and that is, if anything, if at all, that is useful for the future. But having said that, the point is, this is certainly a very well organized one, as the Home Minister has said. The people who have come across have had a very intense training, and they were very equipped and very motivated, and so on. So what is it that the signal that is being given? The signal is certainly in terms of, in my opinion, is in terms of all the rhetoric that has come up here. And, this is traditional to India-Pakistan tensions. When things go beyond a point, this is how it finally ends up and takes a turn, for the good or bad. That is why week before last, in fact, the U.S. State Department spokesman pointedly mentioned this, that that they feel concerned that the tensions are rising in a way that it will inevitably lead to some kind of incident. This is exactly what has happened now. Now, from here,
So you think they had advanced information, or they were just speculating?
It's quite possible that that they had intelligence, because you see, John Kirby is as you can call, from in terms of our hierarchy, he is an additional secretary rank person, or even a secretary rank person in the American U.S. Foreign Service. He's a career diplomat, and use of words, you can trust him to use it very carefully and very discreetly and with great prudence, And when he used that expression, it was a very poignant expression when he said about incident. In fact, when I read the transcript of the press briefing, immediately what struck me was this, that there is something that they were conveying to us. And we don't know really what has transpired on the diplomatic plane, because you see, all the time, every day, on a daily basis, the American embassy is in touch with South Bloc, and also with the security people, because we have a security cooperation also. So it is entirely conceivable, that they passed on whatever they had, Otherwise, the man wouldn't have said it just like that at a briefing and left it at that. And our people who knew about it would also not have left it like that. They would have probed, what he meant by incident, So I think there was definitely some kind of a clue, about this. The point is, what are the Pakistani intentions?
What are the intentions exactly?
The discourses in our media and our country, I think, have gone berserk, in my opinion. I think essentially I don't know if you are aware of this, that tomorrow Obama has scheduled a meeting with Nawaz Sharif.
Right.
And now that is definitely, obviously, that is happening in the taking into account the rising tensions here. This is not a situation where Obama presidency will want to have an India-Pakistan conflict as a legacy. Very, very frankly put it, So they will certainly do their utmost to see that there is no conflict situation arising, and which means that they will expect India to exercise restraint. Now, I am very sure that, looking at the Pakistani side also, they would have done their...
No, sir, but that is later. But what is the intention behind the attack?
Intention, in my opinion, is to bring India over to the negotiating table. It's very hard to tell this here because our discourses are presently very emotion charged. But from the Pakistani point of view, the net thing that they are hoping to get is to engage India in negotiations, in talks relating to Kashmir, and preferably with a kind of an American monitoring.
Okay, sir. I'll come back to you. That's interesting. Saikat, this, what Bhadrakumar says is very interesting. Apart from that, coming back to the incident itself, Pathankot we had. So, what was the post-mortem of Pathankot, and could that have, averted this situation if there was a proper post-mortem?
Well, I would say, if I were to take on from where General Mehta and Commodore Bhaskar have pointed out, I would say there are actually shortcomings on three levels. One, of course, is the intelligence that we have discussed. And obviously intelligence, while there was intelligence that a border action team, which is usually staffed by the JM or the Lashkar-e-Toiba, could have stuck some military formations in the Uri sector. This, however, the brigade commander of the 12th brigade, which is the formation that is holding that peace, and I have been and spent a lot of time in this area. Obviously, they did not take that intelligence very seriously, nor did they have the specifics to work on. So there was a lot of lacks. Two, there has been a lot of failure or shortcomings on the military leadership, because somewhere you are not taking these repeated incidents of assaults very seriously. And as Pathankot has shown, that a military target is a very good target from a terrorist point of view,
Right.
because it delegitimizes the army in front of their own population. It also enhances the profile of the terrorists, because they will show that we took on the might of the Indian state and we succeeded. And two, it also shows that this is the best way to attack and still retain the help of the local population or their sympathy. But three, it's also been a lot of shortcomings on the political front, because the rhetoric that has come after each attack, at some point somebody saying that I will not allow any more attacks, or we will react very strongly, etc. That has put us in politically in such a tight corner that any attack now makes us look very, very silly. And that is a major shortcoming that also needs to be addressed. And as far as my information is concerned, I spoke to a lot of intelligence and military officials who were familiar with this.
And this, what Bhadran was talking about, the US spokesman talking about a possible incident. So they also knew there was some kind of a hint from the US itself.
Not only from a hint from the Americans, but also understand that the fact that battalions are changing. This is a kind of intelligence that both militaries are constantly looking for. In fact, if you walk into an operations room of any major military formation, you will see that which battalions are there, what is their psychological profile, what is their capabilities, everything is maintained by military intelligence. So my sources were telling me, and I would like to think that there is a lot of truth in this, the Pakistani military had a major role in this particular action. And this kind of intelligence that attack the rear headquarters of an infantry battalion, especially at a time when the advance party from 6 Bihar has just come in and 10 Dogra is about to move out, is a very crucial piece of link that we should concentrate on.
I
Yes,
just
yes.
want to add, I think we are also missing a point that the linkage, there is an immediate linkage and there is a distant objective.
What is the
the
immediate
linkage is the UNGA speech of Nawaz Sharif.
Right.
So you have sent out
So
these multiple teams backed or whatever you want to call them. You sent them to Punch. They tried Handwara and Baramulla convoys, not successful. Then they try Uri, successful. So there were 4 or 5 of these.
No, but
teams.
sir, what do you mean?
What
The
I mean
UNGA,
is that
do you agree with what Bhadran
no,
is saying? that-
Bhadrakumar, that's a distant. They want India to speak on Kashmir. I mean, that's the base. What the basis of the composite or the comprehensive bilateral dialogue are the 2 strands. One is terrorism and the other is Kashmir. So I think that's a distant. Right now, the objective is United Nations General Assembly speech where Nawaz Sharif is speaking on 21st September, and he wants to show to the international community, I told you there's a problem in Kashmir. This is what's
But
happening in Kashmir.
would it not boomerang on him?
Why will it boomerang?
Because all this the
Right, you see,
Indian stand, and there is enough evidence of it,
Girish,
is
these
that the Pakistanis are responsible for it. He's talking of a possible military role in this. Pakistani military role in this.
I mean, nobody is unknown. These are not unknowns.
Exactly.
These are facts. But when you are speaking in the UNGA, you can say for 80 days, this unrest is going on, 90 people or whatever number has been killed, and these attacks are going on. And these are human rights violations, there is this happening, there is that. It is secondary whether Pakistan is doing it. We will come to that later.
Okay. Uday Bhaskar, would you agree with that? Is that the way the Pakistanis are trying to?
Girish, I would reconstruct this in the following
Because
manner.
this is much more serious as far as from the Indian point of view.
If you look at this in a 20-year cycle, starting point is that Pakistan embarked on the proxy war against India from January of 1990.
Right.
So India has been dealing with this war for 26 years. It has had various spikes. The better known, for instance, are the attack on Parliament, Mumbai 2008. In the last 6 months or 1 year, we've had Pathankot and now this. I think the immediate provocation, as I see it, is that after India raised the ante, meaning that over the last few months, there has been an attempt to talk about terrorism and Pakistan's role in it. Prime Minister Modi at every forum has drawn attention to this. And in the August 15th speech, the reference to Balochistan, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan. So India has definitely.
Is that these references, the recent references which we know about Balochistan and Gilgit-Baltistan, and you think that is responsible for this attack?
I'm saying that that is one of the strands, including the fact that, as Ashok, General Mehta says, there has been unrest in the valley. So Pakistan wants to maximize its own advantage, and the fact that you have a number of teams operating along the line of control looking for a vulnerability has been going on for a long time. The Indian Army is familiar. They constantly prevent these kind of attacks or incursions, and more often than not they are successful. Uri was one case where, as I said, the adversary had the advantage. But I would make the case again that currently Pakistan, I think, which is on the defensive in the international context, because if you remember, even in the US Senate, they made the same observations. But that did not prevent the United States from making any policy change. They are invested in Pakistan. Similarly, China is invested in Pakistan. Even today, China has made the same kind of statement, which is anodyne, saying that notwithstanding Uri, India and Pakistan should get on with a dialogue. So my point is, Pakistan will seek to maximize when it gets a chance. It will use the nuclear card if it wants to. And I think our External Affairs Minister, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, she's in New York now for the UNGA, she would also try to counter. So I think we can expect a three-pronged attack on the military or the operational side in terms of the diplomatic effort and how Pakistan will try to convey its story to the global audience and put India on the defensive in terms of all these violations.
Okay. Bhadrakumar, what now the response? Now, what are the options before the Indian government?
The options, we'll have to consider all these factors. All these elements which have been mentioned by the distinguished panelists, they are all relevant. No single element is actually contradictory here. They are looking for resonance in the Kashmir Valley. They are trying to fuel the anger there. And they are timing it in terms of, they are raising the ante on Kashmir in the United Nations General Assembly and also in the Human Rights Council. Then, on the other hand, they are engaging the Americans and they are putting the maximum pressure on an administration in the U.S. which is entering a lame duck period to come into this and to play some kind of a role, even if they can manage to get the U.S. in a kind of a monitoring role. It's a success for them diplomatically, etc. Now, how do we counter it? To come to your question, all these factors are relevant. Now, how do you come? We have got to look at it from three templates. One is the domestic part, which I think someone mentioned also earlier, that there is a serious problem politically internally because this government rests on a mandate which is derived out of the pledges it made to make India Fortress India from the national security point of view. Now, ironically, if you look at the social network sites, you know what I mean. There is a lot of criticism now. Suddenly, it is surfacing. There's a surge of criticism, actually, that terrorism has, become a bigger threat today for India. And what the government has to be seen, therefore, acting. That is the domestic part of it. And the important state elections coming up, which also is very important, which is why Amit Shah's statement came out yesterday. Now, all that is all right. Now, you come to the second template, which is in terms of how do you respond to it on the ground. The fact of the matter is that, despite all the strident rhetoric, I am firmly of the view that this is not a situation which we can micromanage or control, because we can start an operation, but we will be triggering a sequence of events over which we have no control. And when you draw the balance sheet a month from hence, how it will look like, we can't even, in the wildest way, we can't even foresee. So the point is, what is the net result? What is the net objective of what we are doing? That we have to be clear about. And that objective is very hard to realize, as far as I can see. If I go through the discussions of various defense analysts that have been there in the media today and yesterday. Now, then you come to the third part, which is the geopolitical part.
Right.
I think it's very wrong on our part to assume that the international Pakistan stands as a pariah. That is not the case here. We have to be very realistic about it. I am not trying to vindicate Pakistan's position, but I am looking at it very realistically. And realistically speaking, the point is a number of countries have got great interest in doing business with Pakistan at the moment. And this business of isolating Pakistan, I think, is not a very realistic objective. And therefore, Pakistan is able to play a certain card here and is able to get back into kind of forcing India to get into some kind of a talk on Kashmir and other related issue. Now, you can imagine that will have a huge resonance in the valley.
And that is not something which India can
This
afford at this
government will
point of
particularly
time.
find it difficult
At this point. Okay,
at
sir.
this point.
Okay. General Mehta, conventional military option, is that something which is ruled out?
Yeah, I think when you raise expectations, when your political leadership talks about punishment, and when your Home Minister talks about Pakistan a terrorist state, and if you go back to Prime Minister Modi's Twitters, when he was not the Prime Minister and when he used to ridicule the previous government for not acting, and when you look to the future, the political future, there are 6 state elections coming up, and national security and internal security are today so important, this business about countering terrorism. For the last 20 years, we are being bled. We are being
sir,
hit.
we don't have time for all that.
No.
Now,
So what I am
what
saying,
is the option?
So my recommendation is that while we do what Bhadrakumar has suggested, we have to, because it involves the morale of the Indian Army, that there will be action on the line of control, covert action behind some military response
Is necessary.
and in and out, a quick operation is absolutely necessary to break out of this straitjacket of being hit every time.
Okay. Uday, retaliation. If that is the option, what about the retaliation?
Well, again, let me say this cautiously as an analyst, that India has options. The Indian military does have capabilities. What the political leadership has to do is, one, to demonstrate the resolve while doing a cost-benefit analysis about which path do we want to take, because there are a number of complex factors. And I think at this point for Prime Minister Modi, there is also a political compulsion because of his own track record and how he has emerged. And on the other 2 fronts, which is the diplomatic front, where, as we said, the EAM is in New York, and getting the story, the narrative. India today is trying to convince the global community about its own experience as far as terrorism is concerned, and this is going to be a long-term challenge, because as we have seen, there is a lot of cynicism about how countries approach terrorism in terms of policy.
Okay, very quickly, Saikat, options very quickly.
So one, of course, I think we should leave it to the professionals in the military. There has to be a military response, and diplomats, of course, will have to do a lot of work. But I think politically this is also a great opportunity, because for a long time our security architecture has been hugely neglected, and a crisis like this is a perfect opportunity to actually improve and make sure that by the time we have another attack, which definitely will be, we are in a much better position to retaliate.
Okay, I think
30,
on that.
30 seconds, the counter to this is, the people will tell you that India has to be a responsible power, and this business of strategic restraint, which has been taken to ridiculous limits, and it is time that this strategic restraint and strategic patience, we get out of this and we show that something can be done and call Pakistan's bluff.
Okay, I think on that note we'll end. This is something which will have to be discussed and discussed further. Strategic bluff, strategic restraint has to be given up. We don't know. A lot of thought will have to go into what kind of action, what kind of reaction will have to be given by the Indian government. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time.